So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, yesterday I put out a poll on Twitter. I said, give me a player at a pick for the Detroit Lions so I can grade them for a video. Now, trade ups or trade downs are an option, of course, but you would need to tell me the compensation, as that would need to be factored into the selection grade. And we got quite a few responses both on Twitter and YouTube. And today I wanted to go over and talk about these players, kind of grade some of your guys' favorite players, and grade some mock draft scenarios that we could end up seeing on draft night. So with that being said, we're going to start off with the first person to respond. And they said either Tank Bigsby or Dwayne McBride at pick 81. Now, I'm going to be completely honest. I have both of them graded as day 3 running backs. Not because I think that they're bad necessarily. I think that Tank Bigsby is a very good running back. I think he's somebody that does lack true top speed, but is fairly elusive, has the power, has the contact balance, and actually reminds me a lot of a healthy Kerryon Johnson without a lot of the injury concerns. I think he'd be a very good player for the Detroit Lions to get, but just due to the depth of running back in this draft class and due to the amount of running backs that are available compared with, just the overall value of the running back position, I think 81 and really all of the top 100 picks the Lions have should be spent on players that are going to impact the Detroit Lions immediately and for a long time. Right? I don't want the 81st overall pick to be a player that after 4 years isn't going to be on the roster because he doesn't have legs left to stand at. I don't want this top 100 pick to go to waste after just 4 years and see a bunch of players that went after him from 82 to 115, 120 or somewhere else in that range to go on and have 10, 12 NFL seasons under their belt and be really good contributing players, because the running back position is replaceable. And that goes for Dwayne McBride as well, who I do have graded, I think, a little bit lower than Tank Bigsby, but both of them I think are good running backs. Both of them I think would help the Detroit Lions get better and build some depth. But if you're talking about a running back 3 at best, a top 100 pick isn't going to be super valuable for them at that position. And I just wouldn't take either running back or any running back at 81 unless their names are Bijan Robinson, Zach Charbonnet, or Jahmyr Gibbs, and maybe Kenny McIntosh because of his receiving upside. But other than those 4, I wouldn't take a running back inside the top 100, but I do think that they are very, very good players. If this were to come true, I think I'd have to give it probably a C-, not because they're bad players, but because I don't think the value at this pick would be very good. And moving on to our next response by just another sports fan. He said Dorian Williams at 152nd, or alternatively, offensive lineman Cody Mauch at the 55th overall selection. Now, Dorian Williams is a linebacker that I think is slightly underrated in this class. For a lot of mock drafts, he's projected to go around that 150, 160 range, and I think he was an incredibly productive linebacker out of Tulsa, somebody that just overall was a very, very good football player and is going to come in and be just as productive in the NFL. He's going to be somebody that his skills are going to translate really well. And I think kind of like running back, the linebacker position is a fairly easy one to move over, right? It's not a position that's always the most complicated. You can make it very simple for players. And a lot of linebackers, especially guys under Kelvin Sheppard, have seen a lot of success in their young careers. And Kelvin Sheppard is very good at getting a lot of talent out of the prospects that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes decide to bring in. I think that Dorian Williams at 152 would be a good pick. I think it'd be probably a B, maybe a B plus pick. I think the value would be spot on for Dorian Williams, and it would address a position of need and get a productive player for the Detroit Lions. Now, I think that A or an A plus picks are really hard to come on day 3 without seeing them actually play, right? Unless it's an obvious steal, like, oh, that guy's a top 100 prospect and for whatever reason just fell. I think Dorian Williams is not quite that, but for 152nd, I think that's good value. I think that's a good pick, and I'd give it a B plus overall. Now, Cody Mock at 55, again, kind of like the running back position, a top 55 pick. I wouldn't spend on a developmental offensive lineman who's not going to play. If I were going to spend a top pick on an offensive lineman, I would do so at the first round. I would do so at 18 if that was what I wanted to do, and I would go out and get one of the best offensive linemen in this draft. Whether you believe that's Broderick Jones, whether you believe that is the kid from Tennessee, Darnell Wright from Tennessee, whether that's Paris Johnson Jr. who falls, whether that's Peter Skoronski who ends up falling to the 18th overall pick. If you're going to address offensive line, I would do so earlier in the draft. I would get a better prospect, I'd get a more sure thing, and I would spend it on a player that I'm more confident in can start on day one if injuries arise, and a player that I'm more confident will develop into a really good offensive lineman, whether it be at guard or at tackle. Now, assuming the Lions didn't do that, I think at the 55th overall pick, it's a little bit of a reach for Cody Mock. I think he's a good player, but I think he's a developmental player. And obviously, it would all depend on who else is around there. If there's a Jack Campbell, if there's a Deion Henley around that range. But for the most part, I think that's a little bit of a slight reach, probably a C plus, B minus level pick. Not the worst pick the Lions can make. Obviously, investing into the offensive line is definitely something that they can do. I think it's necessarily maybe the best option to do it at 55 when you could either get a later round steal or an earlier round that's a little bit easier to project. So good question, or good takes, though. I think very good players overall from a talent perspective. This one comes in from Max, and he says Jack Campbell at 48. Now, I think Jack Campbell is a very good football player. I think Jack Campbell is the best linebacker, and if he's not the best, I think he is the second best linebacker in this class, almost solely depending on what you're looking for in a linebacker. I think that Jack Campbell is obviously the biggest. I think he's the best run supporting linebacker in this draft. And I think he's a real good option for what the Detroit Lions could go out and select. And honestly, I would be a little surprised if he even makes it to 48. From a value perspective, I think Jack Campbell at 48 would be a massive steal. I have him as a top 40 prospect in this class. I have him almost borderline on a first round grade. If he wasn't a linebacker, an off ball linebacker, he'd probably be a little bit higher, but just based off the position, I did drop him a little bit, but I have him just bordering on that first round talent. So if you do end up getting him at the end of the second round, I think it would be a really good get. Somebody that would immediately help your run stopping ability, somebody that would immediately help your defense in general, would just be somebody who is so productive on that defense, kind of the opposite of Malcolm Rodriguez, where Rodriguez is smaller. Jack Campbell is massive. He's 6'5". He's got long arms, and he's not the best in pass coverage, but he's certainly not awful in pass coverage. I think at 48, this would be a really, really good pick. And as I said, as you get later into the draft, it's hard to get those A plus picks. But I think Jack Campbell would be an A plus pick at 48. I think it would be a massive steal from a value standpoint, an easy starter, plug and play day one, and probably the easiest swing of the bat Brad Holmes would ever take in the second round. Now, getting onto the last of the Twitter responses, Charlie Jones, wide receiver from Purdue, 159. I think that the Lions definitely are going to go out and address their wide receiving core at some point in this draft. And I think Charlie Jones is a very good player, really the sole producer of that Purdue wide receiving core. Well, there wasn't a whole lot of other players out there that were really producing at a high level, but Charlie Jones was one of them. He's a player that has the size, has the speed, I think has the ball skills to produce at the next level, and overall would be a very good selection. Now, as I've mentioned previously, it's really hard to kind of get those players to be an A plus range, right? At 159, right? There's not going to be too many players where it's like that guy is going to be an instant starter. That guy is going to be, one of the best players from this draft class. What a steal, what a value. But I think Charlie Jones at 159 is a good pick. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Detroit Lions from a talent standpoint, from a need standpoint, from, every way you can really look at it. And I think Charlie Jones at 159 would be a solid B plus pick, somebody that comes in, probably won't play immediately, but could develop into an X wide receiver sometime down the road. And, in day one could come in and replace Quintez Cephas, could come in, probably replace even a guy like Josh Reynolds and come in and just be a good wide receiver for this core, help it get younger, help it get deeper, and really help them into the 2023 season at some point when the injuries begin to pile up. Now, with all that being said, that is all we have for you guys today. As I said, there were more responses on the YouTube channel. If you have not done so already, go over and find this community post. Go over and find the thread and comment your players. If you guys enjoyed the video and this video gets a lot of likes and views, I will make a second part. I will go over the YouTube. I will go over more Twitter responses if there are some at later dates. But with that being said, as of right now, that is all for you guys today. If you enjoyed the Detroit Lions content, please make sure you go down below, subscribe to the channel, and like the video. It helps the channel out a ton, helps me out a ton, and make sure you guys get daily Detroit Lions content. So with that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so very much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions!